Thank you so much for being here at the latest edition of Collegetown Class. Collegetown Class is an acronym wonderfully smooshed together to incorporate the Collegetown Civic Leadership Alumni Skillshare. So in this series, members of our alumni community and friends of our organization share their skills with our audience, including the wonderful Jess Wood, who is going over anxiety management with us today. I welcome you to turn on your camera if you feel comfortable. We will be engaging face-to-face, but completely understand if that's not the vibe for this evening. Without further ado, I am so excited to kick it over to Jessica Wood for tonight's Collegetown class. Take it away, Jess.
Thanks, Maddie. Alrighty, so we are going to be talking about the fun topic of anxiety management. I know COVID has been super anxiety inducing for many of us during this season of life, and so I just wanted to hop on and kind of share how I've been navigating this season. So we'll just dive right in. All right, so a little bit about me. I have a plethora of roles, I think, as we all do, but I would say one of my biggest things I'm passionate about is wellness and mental health, and I'll get into that in my next slide. But full-time, I'm a director of auxiliary and special events at a local university in Baltimore. I am a floral designer on the side. I'm a blogger and a writer. I'm also a wife and a kitty mom. I love to design pretty much anything. And I'm also, my faith is very important to me. And I also love essential oils, which we will also be talking about today. And I think kind of right there, if you take a moment and like write down all the roles you have, that'll kind of sum up of what your anxiety level might be like right now. And some of these roles that we have, we are self-inflicted, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to kind of take a moment and kind of an inventory of all the roles in your life. And when you're having a moment of anxiety, start prioritizing those a little bit. Like this list in front of you, my list of roles is not listed in any specific order, and I did that on purpose. But when I'm feeling super overwhelmed, I will take a look and say, okay, what role do I really need to focus on right now? Maybe it's my role of wife to my husband, who is a full-time PhD student. Maybe things are crazy at work and I need to kind of just really hone in on my role at the university. I just wanted to preface all this with be mindful of your roles. Alrighty, so heading to the next slide. All right, so why am I qualified to speak to you guys on mental health? Because obviously I am not a psychologist or a therapist, although I see a therapist and I think therapists are a godsend and very helpful. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal journey with mental health. Over the past 10 years, I have had bouts of depression. I have diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder. In the midst of all that, I have phobias. I have had periods where I've been unable to step on an elevator. I've been so scared of it. I have had panic attacks on and off over the past 10 years. I've had panic attacks this year, so I'm no stranger to any of that. And I've also had a very interesting journey with medication. And I think that there is absolutely no shame in being on medication, just like someone who has diabetes, they might need to be on medication to regulate their blood sugar. Some people need medication to help regulate and balance the chemicals in their mind. So there's no shame in that whatsoever. But I have been on this journey, and I think it's super important also to look at our journey with mental health as a journey. Be careful about how you are framing it in your mind, because the words we speak to ourselves are so important that we don't want to be putting a negative connotation around something that already kind of has a negative connotation in society. So a lot of times, even at work, I have team members who say, well, I have a problem. Like, no, let's say it's a challenge. It's all about the way we word things in our mind. So I could look back at the past 10 years and I could look at them with just anxiety and regret. I could look at them with being upset with myself that I had to deal with this, but I choose to look back at the past 10 years with with gratitude and looking at them with a sense of appreciation. And I think it is so important to, when you have struggles in your life and when you're going through these seasons of life, it is important all about how you frame them in your mind. So again, always be careful about how you're speaking to yourself, your own thoughts. I will speak a little bit as I go through tonight about what depression has looked like for me, what panic attacks have looked like, because I think it's so important to really understand. Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I've had bouts of depression," or "Oh, I'm an anxious person," but it's important to say what that actually looks like. So we will be getting into that a little bit too. But one of my biggest things that I think is just having these conversations. These are such hard conversations to have for a lot of people. And just this is the first step. The fact that we're here, that we're having this conversation is breaking down barriers for a lot of people. So kudos to everyone that joined, because this is a big first step. Alrighty, so I just wanted to jot down a few initial thoughts that I was having as I was putting this together for you guys. But when you're on a mental health journey of any kind, it is so important to take the time to identify what you're going through, because a lot of times people will go through a really tough season of life, and they might have never been diagnosed with depression. They might never have been diagnosed with anxiety. And then they get to the other side of that really tough season, and then they're like, okay, well, it's over. And they just plow on through. They just move on without taking the time to kind of look at what just happened there. What was that? Why did I go through that season where I couldn't think straight? And really taking the time to identify what happened, because then you can move forward and be more prepared if it were to happen again, or if you have a loved one that ends up walking through a tough season of life. So make sure you take the time to identify your feelings, whether that's with it by yourself, doing it meditative, or journaling, kind of just taking that time to be introspective, or doing it with a therapist, having them identify what you may have just gone through or what you're in the midst of right now. Just take the time to identify it, because if you do that, you might realize, oh, like there's a lot of other people who are going through this too. Like for me with depression and anxiety, in the beginning, 10 years ago, when I was a senior in high school going through this for the first time, I didn't know I was having a depressive episode. I didn't know that at that time, why I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. There was actually oh, sorry, getting tongue tied. There was actually a actual name of what I was going through. And then when I had my first panic attack, and now I will say panic attacks look different for everyone, but for me, a lot of times it's like, and I do want to say also, if you're triggered by talking about certain anxiety things, just be mindful as you are listening to this, because I'm going to be vulnerable and sharing what I've gone through. And it's just important to be mindful about the things you're listening to, especially if you're in the midst of a hard season right now. But I think if you're here listening to this, that's a huge first step in your own healing and recovery, because talking about it and having these conversations is really big. So anyway, my panic attacks over time, they've kind of changed and evolved, but it's kind of like a wave of my whole body tenses up. And then a lot of times I will feel very nauseous, and which connects to one of my phobias, which is I have a phobia of throwing up. And I've had that phobia for years and years and years. So when I feel any kind of change in my digestive system, my body immediately tightens up. It's a flight or fight response. I just need to get out of there. I start shaking, I start sweating, I get cold sweats. And a lot of people and some people get chest pains. I mean, if you look it up online, there's so many different symptoms that can accompany a panic attack. But over the years, I've been very mindful of taking notice. Okay, what is my symptoms? So how can I better prepare for when I'm facing that in the future? And so the next part of that is being mindful of what your triggers are. Because some people are like, well, I just had a panic attack out of nowhere. I was just sitting there on the bus and I suddenly had a panic attack. And that can be really defeating, because you're like, well, I have no idea what triggered that. I don't know how to move forward. And then some people get so scared, they're like, what is it going to happen again? What do I do at this point? And that is why it is so important to identify what your triggers might be. Because more than likely, something triggered an emotional or a physical response in your body to cause that panic attack. For me, a lot of times it's being in an enclosed space where I can't identify a clear out. So if I'm in like I used to live in Manhattan, and when I would go on public transportation, I felt trapped. And for me, that would trigger a panic attack because I didn't know a clear way out. And now over the past 10 years, it's more evolved into when I just don't feel in control of certain things, in control of a situation. And I think that's what it comes down to for a lot of people. A panic attack is when you just have no control over your mind, over what your body is experiencing, and you become afraid of the panic attack itself. And so that is why it is so important to take the time to identify your feelings, but also your triggers. And that goes the same for when you're feeling blue or having a depressive episode, or when you're just feeling on edge and anxious in general. Most likely, there is always a trigger, which kind of, I'm going to jump ahead, which kind of gets into the saying HALT, which is, are you hungry? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling tired? Or are you angry? Because more than likely, if you fall in one of those four categories, that is triggering your anxiety. And we'll get to that a little bit later. I'm also a firm believer, a lot of people are like, focus on self-care, like do more self-care activities. And I'm like, let's just forget self-care and focus on everyday wellness, because people think self-care is something they do once a month or maybe once a week to help them calm down. But there is so much more that we can be doing on a daily basis to help minimize those negative mental experiences. And you might be someone who does not have any diagnosed mental health condition, and that is perfectly fine. You might feel like your thoughts are just racing and out of control. Any of this can be helpful in living a happier and healthier life because you are taking back control over your mind. And you can do that. I think people feel helpless sometimes. I have felt helpless in the past. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm in control over my thoughts. But the reality is we can take back control. And that is why everyday wellness is so important, because it's kind of like preventative health. The same way you eat your vegetables to stay healthy, there's things you can do on a daily basis to help you stay connected and grounded and in a better mental frame of mind. So one of the things that someone said to me about a year ago that really has stuck with me since was, you may not have control over your feelings, how you feel about something, but you always have control how you react to that feeling, how you move forward from that point. And I think that's so important to remember, whether you are someone diagnosed with a mental health condition, or if you are someone who just is having a rough day or a rough week, or you're just in a season of life where you just are not happy right now. You have control how you can move forward from those feelings. Your feelings do not have to dictate your actions. And then we do run into trouble when we let them dictate. All right, so moving on. So I put in some graphics here that I thought were very helpful. When I was talking about triggers, like what is triggering that reaction you're having. So I thought some of the really good ones on here. I felt like the bad guy. I felt blamed. I felt lonely. I felt controlled, or I felt uncared for. I felt a lack of passion. It's really, really important. There are so many things that can trigger feeling anxious or feeling overwhelmed or just feeling very panicky. So it's important to just kind of, again, take that time and be like, okay, I overreacted this morning, and that's fine. And so many people would move forward from overreacting. But if you take the time to identify, why did I actually overreact? The likelihood of you having that same response again in the future, you just minimized it because you took the time to do the work. And half the battle with mental health is first identifying what's going on, and second, being willing to put in the work. Because if you're not willing to put in the work, you're going to end up stuck on that same loop and cycle, and it becomes even harder to break the cycle. This was another quote I really liked that I wanted to share. We can never become excellent in our actions if we don't first make a commitment to become excellent in our thoughts. Over years, and especially over the past several years, it has become, I realized that we are in a battle in our minds. Our mind is a battlefield, and we are in a constant battle trying to take back control over our thoughts, trying to stay on a optimistic and it's hard to stay optimistic, especially in times with COVID and everything else. But we can take back control. And that is the key thing I want to hang on to today, is that we can take back control by being more preventative and being more just aware, self-aware, and how we can move forward. All right, so now I want to get into what my wellness toolkit looks like, the things that have really helped me during COVID. So I do want to preface this because I have been in a very unique season of life in the past couple months. So because my journey started, like I said, 10 years ago, and I had my first depressive episode going from my senior year of high school into my first year of college, which then was followed by occasional panic attacks and then just regular generalized anxiety disorder for many years. And then the depression seasons, mine were not chronic, but they kind of just came and went depending on how I was taking care. Mostly it was related to how I was taking care of myself, if I had good self-care measures in place. But I did end up going on medication when this all first started. And again, medication, nothing to be ashamed of. I've been on meds for 9 years. But COVID has actually been a gift to me because it has enabled me to build the time I needed into my schedule to have really good self-care. Again, the word self-care, but really good wellness things in place on a daily basis. So to the point where I was like, I think I'm ready to give myself a break from my anxiety meds. So actually 3 months ago, I started the journey of coming off an anxiety and antidepressant medication I've been on for 9 years. And another discussion for another time, but coming off anxiety meds is no joke. And if you look on the internet because that's what I did. I went on the internet and I was like, I want to read all the things about how to come off anxiety meds, how to deal with the side effects, because there are a plethora of physical symptoms that accompany this. And there really was not a lot out there. It was a lot of people saying how difficult it was. There was a lot of people saying, well, these are all my symptoms, and I just decided to stay on the medication. And so I am also very, very passionate about sharing my journey with how to come off these types of meds, how to do it successfully. I'm still in the midst of this journey right now, and but I have gone from 100 milligrams to 25 milligrams in 3 months, which you want to space it out and you want to do it over a long period of time. But this experience has really helped me hone what my wellness toolkit looks like. And I actually have been documenting my whole journey, and I will be sharing it in blog posts on my blog. So stay tuned for that. But as for my wellness toolkit, so the main things that really I have been focusing on a very regular basis are journaling, my faith and spirituality, the basics, exercise, diet, type, sleep. Essential oils have been huge for me in this journey. And then also just keeping up with creating and designing, which is very important when it comes to mental health. And I'll talk about each of these in the slides to come. All right, so journaling. A lot of people say, well, do you journal? Do you get your thoughts out? I actually really did not like journaling for a very long time. I was like, I don't want to sit there and write all my negative thinking into a book that could end up in someone else's hands at some point. I was like, I don't want to write down these negative thoughts. But then after thinking about it, I mean, I'm the type of person, and again, it comes back to knowing yourself, but my thoughts tend to race, and I will go thought to thought, especially at nighttime after my day's ending. Because I also was one who never had a good bedtime routine, to wind down after a long day. So I don't know where I read about it. I don't know who suggested it, but I started doing thought downloads. I didn't write paragraphs about my day. I didn't write about this experience I encountered with so-and-so earlier in the day. Instead, I literally just wrote down every single thought that was on my mind for about 15 minutes before I went to bed. And I called it a thought download. And so what I would do is I would sit there and I'm like, okay, I literally would write out my to-do list. Okay, these are all the things that I'm thinking about that I have to do tomorrow. These are all the things that are bothering me right now. These are the things that made me smile today. And oh yeah, I forgot I want to do this. Like literally, it's just like pouring my brain out onto a piece of paper. Because honestly, there is so much freedom in getting things out of our mind and onto paper. And also, side note, that is why therapy is so huge, because if you take the time to And if you don't go to a therapist, that's fine, but there is such power over getting our thoughts out of our mind and verbalizing them to someone or writing them on paper. Because a lot of times we feel trapped in our minds. We feel like our thoughts are taking control, and we're like, well, I don't know how to get through this. So I've gotten personally into the pattern of I see my therapist every couple of weeks. I mean, we all know that those types of things are not cheap, but I have like loved ones who I feel comfortable enough to say to them, I'm having an intrusive thought right now. I can't get past this intrusive thought. This thought will just not leave my mind, and I need to say it out loud to take power away from it. And there is so much power, or so much strength in taking that power away from our thoughts and putting it back into us. And that's what thought downloads can do for you too. You are literally taking the thought out of your mind and putting it on paper. And then you're able to just proceed and move on with your evening, your day. And I encourage you to do that throughout the day too. Keep your notebook or your journal nearby, or even a note in your phone, and write down thoughts as they come to you throughout the day that you just like, you know what? I don't have time to think about this right now. I don't have time to ruminate on this. I'm going to go ahead, write it down, and come back to it later. And a lot of times, once I get that thought on paper, I don't feel like I need to come back to it. It's out. I can just move on. It's very freeing, and you can move on. So I highly recommend trying thought downloads if you don't like the traditional way of journaling. Another thing I do is, again, my faith is very important to me, so I will often write down my prayers and then how I see God answering my prayers. If you are just a spiritual person in general and you believe in a different higher power, just write down things that like hopes and dreams you have for yourself. And then kind of just go back to that page in your journal and write how you're seeing those hopes and dreams manifest and unfold in your life. So there's a couple different ways to do that, but it just kind of getting those dreams and hopes out of your mind into paper, seeing them on paper, they become so much more real. And then kind of just letting the universe or letting God do what they will with them. I also keep a journal with me when I meditate. Now, I am not a regular meditator. I'm trying to be, but the times that I have taken the time to meditate, it's been super powerful. So for me, I keep my journal next to me when I'm meditating. And because when you're meditating, you're supposed to be mindful, and you're supposed to just kind of clear your mind. And mindfulness is the practice of when a thought comes in your mind while meditating, you just acknowledge it, but you let it keep flowing through. So what I do is if I have a random thought that pops up while I'm trying to meditate, I will actually write that thought down and then move on with my meditation. That way it's not stuck in my head. I'm not like, oh, my mind's not wandering off to my to-do list and everything else. Again, getting it out of your head and onto paper. And the other thing is keeping your journal nearby to just write down things that inspire you throughout the day. I actually sometimes have my journal in my car. If I'm listening to a podcast and I want to remember something at a red light, I'll just quickly jot a couple words down so that I can come back to that later. If throughout the day, if I might see, I know we all know we scroll on Pinterest or Facebook periodically throughout our day. So if I come across a quote I want to hang on to, I'll just jot it down and come back to that later. So I just want to say there's a lot of different ways to journal than your traditional writing about your day and writing about your experiences in paragraphs. And I just kind of wanted to share the different ways that journaling has been helpful for me that are not so traditional. So I do want to briefly touch on faith and spirituality, because this has been a huge in helping me progress throughout my mental health journey. Just the fact that I have a hope in something bigger than myself that gives me purpose, because when you are in a dark place and when you have depression, a lot of times it becomes very difficult to even see the purpose, to even feel driven to keep moving forward. And you're like, well, why do I have to go to work tomorrow? Why should I even get out of bed? But when you have a practice of faith or spirituality, it gives you a meaning that you can hang on to and that will pull you out of that dark place. I will say there's been many times that my prayers have been what got me off the floor after I was having a depressive episode or a panic attack, and helped me move on throughout my day, because I surrendered what I was feeling, and I recognized I only can do so much. So I'm going to surrender this to God, or surrender this to whoever you believe in, or it's just to the universe. And then just realize I can only do what I can do and move on. One of the mantras I repeat to myself is I can't, but he can. And that often gets me through when I'm really just can't see the next step in front of me. And I think just acknowledging that we live in a broken world with broken bodies, and the fact that we can only do so much, and accepting our limitations, is so huge in being able to move forward, because if we take it upon ourselves to try to do everything and be everything, and that can weigh so heavily on you. So there's so much power again in surrendering and accepting our limits and capabilities, and to help move forward. All right, so now just the basics that have really helped me. Finding a regular exercise. My primary care physician, when I approached her and said I wanted to start coming off my medication, because again, if you were ever considering that, consult with your doctors, make sure you have a good team in place who can give guidance and structure. She said to me, okay, well, you should be exercising every day. And I tried that for a while, but exercising every day is not the most ideal thing for people who work full time. And so I will say now I exercise probably about 3 to 4 times a week, some weeks more, some weeks less. But I have always been the type of person that I would try a million different types of workouts until I found something that I like. And that's what I encourage a lot of people to do, because they're like, well, I just hate exercising. Like, I hate it. And I'm like, well, did you try different things? There are so many apps. I love a lot of the different apps that offer different workout programs, because I find if I start a workout program that is like a 30-day thing, it's so much easier because you can actually see your progress as you go along. Okay, well, I just did 5 days. But so the exercise that has really have stuck with me is yoga, Pilates, and running. Yoga is wonderful because yoga and running are amazing because they make you focus on your breathing. And that quiets your thoughts, quiets your minds. And if you focus on your breathing, you're quieting down your nervous system. And if any of you suffer with panic attacks, deep breathing and having a good solid breathing practice in place, it will make a world of a difference in quieting your body down. Also, diet and hydration. Are you drinking enough water? Because believe it or not, if you are not drinking an adequate amount of water throughout the day, your mental health will suffer. And I still struggle with this because it is so easy to forget to keep drinking water. But I try adding lemon to my water to help me drink more throughout the day. And also the thing that I've learned in the past couple months is the importance of gut health. Are you paying attention to what you're actually putting in your body? I've noticed for myself, the more sugar I have, correlates to how upbeat I am the next day. I actually feel more down if I have a ton of sugar one day. The next day, I notice myself feeling like sluggish and just not motivated at all. And actually, and I'm not, again, not a scientist, don't have a medical degree, but I do want to say what I found from my research is that your small intestine is where the majority of your serotonin, which is the chemical in your mind that helps regulate your mood, that is where the majority of your serotonin is produced and released. So if you're not taking good care of your gut and you're not eating things that are fostering good gut health, that's going to slow down that production and hence affect your mood. So it doesn't mean you have to overhaul your diet. It doesn't mean you have to go and start buying all the fruits and veggies and eating super duper healthy. Just pay attention to how different foods are affecting you. And I think a lot of times we become overwhelmed with this stuff because you're like, well, okay, I'm going to go do the keto diet now, but that can become very discouraging very quickly. So just pay attention. Oh, well, I ate a popsicle last night and I feel like crap today, or I ate too much bread yesterday and I kind of feel really sluggish today. So just start eating a little less bread. Don't eat that sugary popsicle, that type of thing. And then sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, my body physically just starts shutting down if I'm not getting enough sleep. Some people can thrive on a little less sleep, but more than likely, they're also probably ingesting a lot of caffeine to get them through the next day. I personally try to avoid caffeine because caffeine makes me more anxious and jittery. But making sure I sleep enough is just very, very important. And again, there's that HALT acronym I mentioned earlier. The next time you're feeling a wave of anxiety, ask yourself, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Because most likely those are 4 things that you can actually take action on and move forward. If you're feeling lonely, call someone up, call your family member, call a friend. If you're feeling tired, build in some time for rest, go to bed a little bit earlier. Am I hungry? Just grab an energy bar. Like, there are tangible things you can do to address those 4 things in order to move forward and probably increase your mental health and help you feel better quickly. All right, so essential oils. Essential oils have surprisingly been really big for me in the past couple months. And I say surprisingly because I was skeptical at first about using them because I've never been a super holistic person. Um, but I knew that when I started this journey of weaning off my medication, that I was going to need additional emotional and physical support. So I actually reached out to a friend who I knew used essential oils. I ordered my first kit, and they have been a game changer as I've weaned off my meds. Because if you know anything about tapering off meds, there's a lot of physical side effects from nausea. You can't sleep, very hard to focus, headaches, everything across the board. So having these have been really big. So in case you don't know what essential oils are, they're derived directly from plants. They're very, very concentrated, so you don't need much to help your body. Um, they go through a very rigorous farming and distilling process that helps maintain the benefits that plants can provide the human body. So also when you're thinking about getting, if you want to try essential oils, be mindful of the companies you're getting them from, because a lot of companies put fillers in them and they're not pure. So that the more fillers that are in your oils also means probably the cheaper they are, which is nice, but more than likely you're not going to reap the benefits of that specific oil. So how do you use essential oils? Well, I should have grabbed some oils, but I actually use them topically. You can diffuse them in your home. You can add them to tea and ingest them. So one of the big things for me is applying them topically. I have different blends of oils in roller bottles that I actually will roll on the palm of my hand. And then what I'll do is you want to roll them on certain points of your body because you want to roll them in places where they'll absorb into your bloodstream quickest. So palms of your hands, bottoms of your feet, along your spine, right behind your ears. Those are places on your body where they're going to absorb quickest. And then affect your nervous system and help calm things down, or depending on how you're using them. There's so many essential oils that will help. So for me, initially I was like, well, I need something for my headaches and nausea. And believe it or not, I will say, and essential oils are not a cure for any type of mental ailment or physical ailment, but they're more for supporting different things. But I've actually gotten to the point where I go to my essential oils before I take Tums or before I take ibuprofen or Tylenol, and they actually provide support and relief without having to take those extra medications, which is really nice for me. But so I actually have a roller that I use when I'm having a panic attack. And like I said, I'm no stranger to panic attacks. Because I'm in the midst of this medication transition, I've had several panic attacks in the past couple weeks while driving with people or whatever. So I have a roller that I actually have a mixture of Stress Away, a Valor, frankincense, and peppermint. So Stress Away is like a vanilla oil that is really good for just promoting a sense of calm. Valor is great for overwhelming thoughts. Frankincense is very grounding and helps you just remember, be centered where you are. And peppermint is just amazing in terms of helping you kind of bring you back, focus you, helps with nausea. So I have a roller that I use, and I roll on the center of my hand, and then I'll do what is called a scent tent. And I just kind of fold my hands like this and do some deep inhales. And then it kind of, it goes directly, like by inhaling it that way, it helps directly calm down everything. And that has been huge with my panic attacks. I have a roller of bergamot and lavender that I use to help when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, just kind of help me feel like me again. And like oils can be used for so much. And if you are interested in learning more about essential oils, please feel free to reach out directly. I actually have a Facebook group for family and friends who are interested in using oils that I can add you to, where I share recipes and everything else. So essential oils have been a huge support for my mental health in this season. And the last thing is creating and designing. So I really like this quote: creating requires the courage to let go of certainties. And regardless of what type of creating and designing you're doing, you are giving yourself the opportunity to express yourself. So like when you're painting, for example. So my forms of creating that I really like are floral design. As I shared some of my floral design with you guys. I really like watercolor painting. I'm really big just in crafts for around the home, for around the holidays. So a lot of times when you're expressing yourself via DIYs or painting, you're allowing your mind to express itself in a way that you don't normally. So you might actually feel like you released an emotion you didn't realize was built up after doing the creating. Um, and I can't explain the science behind it, but I just really encourage you to find a way to release that creativity inside of you, because more than likely you're going to end up releasing some negative emotion in a really beautiful way that will help you move forward from whatever was weighing you down or holding you down. And the cool thing about creating and designing for me too is when I'm in the midst of a project, whether that's just using my hands, and you don't have to be good at it. I mean, I'm not the best when it comes to drawing or whatever, but when I'm doing that, my mind turns off and I'm able to focus solely on what's in front of me. And that happens for a lot of people. So if you are willing, try to any type of creative outlet. Try a pottery class or something that allows you to just turn your brain off, use your hands, and help stop those racing thoughts. So that's kind of a wrap for me. I just wanted to talk about, again, what's in my wellness toolbox, especially, I mean, COVID's been taking such a toll for many people. It's been very isolating, and mental health struggles have been on the rise for many. So it's just really important to me to have these conversations and really be vulnerable, because if you are vulnerable to someone, more than likely they're going to feel like they can be vulnerable to someone else, and it kind of just opens up the conversation. So if you have any questions, if you want to talk about any of the things I shared about today, please feel free to reach out. I shared my email and where you can find me on social media. I do have a blog in the works, and I'm going to be sharing a lot of different coping mechanisms that I have worked on over the past 10 years, and what my journey has looked like. But I'm appreciative of Maddie and Collegetown for this opportunity to share, and I hope you guys got something out of it.
Thank you so much, Jess. That was wonderful. Thank you for putting the time and effort and energy into creating this wonderful presentation, and also for your vulnerability and honesty. I completely agree with your sentiment that having these conversations is difficult and so important. So, so appreciative of your message and all of the tips and tricks that you laid out for everyone, regardless of where they are on their wellness journey. So I know I definitely took away lots of bullet points. I'm looking down at my notes. I love your message of everyday wellness over, doing a face mask once every other week or whatever. Like I hear you loud and clear on implementing little things throughout every day. It's so important. So yeah, I know I can only speak for myself, but I'm generalizing for the rest of our audience too when I say there was so much great content in 13 jam-packed slides. So thank you so much. This will live on the Collegetown YouTube channel. So audience members can watch it after the fact if 5 p.m. on a Monday wasn't their time to tune in. So with that, I will let you go, let everybody else go as well, and we'll wrap for the evening. I look forward to keeping in touch, and maybe see you on the next Collegetown class when we have one. You can do a craft one.
That sounds good. Thanks, Maddie.